Thank you very much for having me.
Now, talk to me about this. What really prompted the partnership between Momentum and Unisa in the first place?
It actually started 3 years ago when we looking at household finances, and we developed this concept of financial wellness. And then part of an awareness campaign for households to participate, Momentum became aware, and their internal thinking were very similar than ours. And then we just started talking to say together we can actually do better with their access to the higher income groups, and we more access to the lower income groups. So it just continued from that original conceptualization of the two different projects.
How many households did you target?
This year we're talking about 1,800, so it differs annually between 2,500 to 3,000 households that we talk to on an annual basis.
Now, what is causing so much financial pressure on households, do you think?
I think it's a combination, and what we really advocate is households are different pockets of households. Your lower income, we're all aware of, they're struggling with access to jobs, education levels are low, so the employment skills are not there, they are over-indebted. Higher income groups, and your anchored well, what we talk about, is they more better in a financial position, but they're not necessarily as best as they can be. They also get not debt that they need, or it's more expensive debt, so it's a lot of the behavioral side for the upper classes.
Now, what are some of the trends that you've picked up in this study that you've done?
This is the third year that we did this study, and unfortunately the wellness, how we calculate it, has deteriorated each year. So it's the third year going. We do adjust it to take into account inflation, but households' income were under pressure, their balance sheets has deteriorated for, again, pockets of households. So it's definitely for the households not the best position they can be in.
And what sort of position would that be?
What we see is that households can improve their own situation. So there are some households that are really victim to their own habits. And those households should really take note. It depends on what debt they have incurred. A lot of them have taken unsecured debt. That's the most expensive debt that they do have. We need to go back to mortgages. Your lower income groups and your uneducated group needs to step up with their skills to become employable or get a business, to start up their own businesses, to eventually look at a better position.
When you say we need to go back to mortgages, exactly what do you mean by that?
I think if you looked at the debt that has been granted in the last few years, we're all aware that there was a huge appetite for unsecured debt, and a lot of people actually used that to fund some of their even mortgages payments or their initial installments. And again, the financial services were a bit skeptic. It was easier to give mortgages. We need to go back that there has been a bigger appetite for mortgages, so that households therefore get credit, and the cheaper credit and the longer duration credit, and that credit is backed by an asset like a house. Consumers used unsecured loans to go and buy clothing and food and all those type of things that are gone tomorrow, but the debt is still there.
Which is not good debt, is it?
Not at all.
Now, how is this report going to influence the policymakers identify and remove the issues contributing to financial unwellness, so to speak?
What we try to indicate is what were the major issues. So for the one group, it is the lack of education and the lack of skills. So there has to be an intervention. We do have a lot of dependence on grants, but those people are not necessarily retrained. How will they ever get out of the grant system? So that has to be a very specific parallel stream going with the grant dependence. We need to train and retrain a lot of people. On the other side of the coin, we need to look at financial education, and we need interventions. We've now just got a new ministry for entrepreneurship. What is that really going to help the entrepreneurs to get a business going with all the red tape that we have to do? So those are the things that the Treasury and the NCR and they've had to look at. Debt is too expensive on the credit rating scores. How are we going to help these people?
Now, what are ordinary South African households supposed to take out of this particular study?
I think it's important that they are not necessarily victims. There's a lot of things that happen that you don't have control about, but there are a lot of things that you do have control about. You need to step up on making yourself get a job or get a business that you can take responsibility for yourself. And then if you are in debt, go and get help. There's a lot of initiatives getting people out of debt. People are almost ashamed to go and ask for help, so get the help that you can take it further. And try and get into the financial services market. What we see, one of the major differences is people that are in the financial services, like your pension funds, those were the groups that exceeded the rest. So get into the market. We need to get our social security reform going so that everybody has access to the financial market.
Talk to me about security reform.
The Treasury has been looking at it for the last number of years. It was actually supposed to be in active 2010 already, that we have a broad spectrum of almost compulsory membership to a pension fund. It's not implemented yet. We need to get that going because, as I said, one of the biggest distinguishing factors between the different groups was access and investment in the financial markets. And a lot of people are excluded from that.
So if the majority of people then can invest, they can start saving and they can earn some money.
Yes, and it talks to, it's almost not voluntary saving, it's compulsory saving. So you don't even know because people are, I can't afford it. But if it's done and it was 10 Rand here or 50 Rand there, it has happened and you're not even aware of. And over time, it is something. So that is the whole idea about the Social Security reform, that we get people into that platform as soon as possible. And that needs to happen.
And your advice to consumers out there in closing?
I think is they need to take note of what's happening across around them, but also take note of the personal situation and really seek advice whichever resort is necessary.
Professor, thank you so much for joining us here on AM News. That was Professor Bernadene de Clercq, Professor, the head of the Personal Finance Research Unit at UNISA.